So just for my own understanding, all right?
Uh-huh.
I haven't really done a lot of research into how Russia came to be aligned sort of with OPEC. But OPEC was mainly the Gulf states and Saudi
Hmm.
Arabia, and that's been pretty much established since the 70s. And like Kissinger got the gold standard moved over to the petrodollar with the in the early 70s, and so OPEC's been around since then. And
Hmm.
Russia's been, the Soviet sort of communist sort of thing, and then it fell apart, and then they've become whatever they've become now. How long has Russia been involved with OPEC? Or are they
Um,
like, say you're saying Russia and Saudi are
they're
going
not
to war,
the
right? Like, how is it all arranged, or has it been arranged? Just
so there's OPEC plus.
yeah,
That's the first thing you have to realize. When Russia got kicked out of the G8, it started being more involved in many other places because it was still about getting investment money into their Arctic choices. Because
yeah,
there's a choice of 500 places that external companies can come in, vastly research natural resources, not just oil. That was the other reason Ukraine was such a major name in modern news, not just because of Joe Biden and Trump and stuff. There's the Ural Mountains there that have huge, vast, untouched resources
yeah,
that the
yeah,
country can never export, and choose to go into it by itself.
yeah,
It was investment money. Okay. But Russia has been in and out of OPEC plus for decades. Decades. So when Russia fell in the 80s, it went to OPEC for what? Secured oil bonds. But Russia was still being run by the criminal oligarchs at that time.
yeah, yeah. That's what I was going to ask.
Okay? Right. And the criminal oligarchs know a criminal deal when they see a criminal deal. And they didn't take any of the forced criminal deals by OPEC.
Mm.
So technically, if you believe what the global narrative is saying, Russia is in a war with American oil. Technically, it's not. It's in war with the petrodollar and the mafia that runs the petrodollar. And Saudi Arabia is the head don of the petrodollar mafia. Okay? So that's the standoff that's going on there. So how long has Russia been in OPEC plus? Majorly is when Russia got kicked out of the G8 and it became the G7. That's
Mm.
when major new talks began to go on. Because once it got out of the G7, there were certain economic deals and sanctions that were put against them that severely limited their capacity to get external investment from any of the big banks.
Yeah, yeah. So there's been a handicap, sort of a hindrance
Right.
put on their
Right.
development, and obviously they're they're incredibly wealthy. They just need help to get it. That's what.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Just the sheer
The thing
size of
is,
their continent, like size
the thing
country.
is, there's enough money in the oligarchs to do the investment, but the oligarchs don't like using their own money. Because once they start carving out more territory, it goes back to the old Tsar days.
Yeah,
Who owns the most territory runs the most of the country. So it's a step back for them if they do that process. Okay?
yeah.
So something else to understand about the collapse of the OPEC talks and the OPEC plus. There are 4 shale oil companies that will survive, the top 4. And there's about 80 that will be totally destroyed from it. Okay? But those shale oil companies that will be destroyed are leveraged to certain banks. Okay? There are certain banks that are so leveraged to the shale oil guys that it'll put those banks under. Okay? If BP, British Petroleum, which it's not into shale oil, it's got investments in it, but it also has like $50 to $100 billion in investment into deep oil drilling wells.
Yeah.
Ocean wells, and in a massive naval fleet of oil searching fleets that scans the underground ocean to look for all sorts of things. Now, the whole oil industry itself is not really a modern technological invested organization. It's specific, only looking for oil. And whatever else it finds down there, it sells to other capital investment companies. Like there's huge volumes of gold and silver just off the shore of the United States. And another thing called methyl hydrate, which can completely replace oil. It's basically solid methane. Okay, huge. It's just waiting for there to be tapped, and they have not developed. They have patents on all that. That's the big thing. The oil companies, they have all these patents, but they have not developed and sold the technologies to make those resources commonly available. Russia can make those resources commonly available, and is probably what they'll do. And this is probably why Putin's reorganized the government many times over, which is to get the petrodollar traders out of his organizations and keep replacing them with people on his side. Because, the CIA doing whatever it can do to destabilize the Russian government.
Yeah.
Okay? Just like Russia's trying to destabilize the American government. Okay? They do that stuff. So if Russia decides to open up the technological field to support its growing oil industry, it will have investment that OPEC will not. Because shale should have never been an investable oil commodity, ever. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, shale and fracking serve its own purpose for consciousness, obviously.
Right. Right.
Up the land, basically, and pumps all these chemicals in and just distorts. Yeah, many things. It's there's a consciousness purpose for shale and like fracking. So there's been from what I perceive, it's just like there's been a benefit for investing in this like this industry that shouldn't be there,
Yes, exactly. Industry that shouldn't be there, or should be so modernized that it should have deep sea exploration vessels, deep sea mining frequencies where they should be mining gold and silver off the ocean floor, producing food, deep sea under ocean, high pressure food production. Because what happens when you put something under high pressure oxygen with high pressure lights, food goes 10 times the size. Okay. With the amount of oil investment and what they find deep under the oceans, that should have been done 30 years ago. Okay, but it's not, because the oil guys they're hampered in their intellectual capacity to expand themselves on purpose. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's an example. One Shell oil company, Royal Dutch Shell oil company, discovered an oil a vein off the coast of Costa Rica or something to that effect. But they also found huge volumes of helium, which is very rare. Okay, like the United States is the biggest helium producer in the world.
Yeah.
There's only like several major places that are all in Southwest United States that produce helium for the whole world.
Yeah.
But none of those helium resources were, let's just say, sold off, manipulated, anything done to them. Okay? Why? Because the oil companies know there are certain resources that have to be strategically held by the main petrodollar advancement, which is the United States. So they own the rights to that helium, but it's never going to be taken out of the ground. Okay? Never going to be taken out of the ground. Because, United States pegs the entire helium market worldwide.
Yeah, you challenge that.
Right.
Is it worth it?
So the petrodollar,
You're like
as
challenging
right,
our mantle of like supremacy. It's an act
right,
of economic war,
right. So the petrodollar search and explore wing of them knows where all the resources is. Okay, Russia knows where all the resources is too. It's not just in northern Russia. It's just easy because it's already part of their country, and there's no world legal affairs for them to deal with.
Mm.
Russia can easily build a brand new high-speed railroad direct from Moscow to the freaking North Pole. Okay, and it doesn't need to be an oil or resource pipeline. It just needs to be a rail line, two-sided rail line, high-speed rail line.
Mm.
Okay, it's done it before. Okay, transcontinental railroad.
So so basically, for a long time, Russia's been trying to dig itself out of an investment hole, and there's these hurdles that keep getting put up. It seems to hinder
because
them.
it has such issues. Right, it has such issues because it has such issues between its secret money and its public money. Yeah. Remember, it's still supporting the entire public space program, global space program.
Hmm.
Okay, so it has a private, off the books, off economy issue versus on the books, on economy issue, and that's what the petrodollar really covers up. That there are two separate banking systems that run the world, but they have to balance out some way.
Hmm.
That's why so many of the banks are leveraged at 600% or more, and why they let the mortgage market increase on paper over 20 plus years.
Mm.
So there was more investment capital that would be on the other banking system, non-SWIFT system.
Yeah. So what was the agreement that Saudis were seeking in the OPEC? And they
wanted to increase production by 1.5 million barrels a day.
I thought they were looking to prevent, restrict,
right. That's what Russia wanted. Right. That is what Russia wanted too. Was to control the market, to lessen the dampen the market.
Because
but
there's
Saudi
no
Arabia,
demand.
Right. There's no demand. China, exactly. And that's what happened.
And that's what would stabilize and raise the price because
exactly. Lavrov left. The Russian foreign minister walked out on the OPEC meeting, basically. And Putin said, absolutely no, we're not going to follow this because he knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. But the narrative is being played against Putin right now.
Yeah. Of course.
Right. And the same day after that happens, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, arrests a third of the Saudi royals. Okay? Because they have Russian investments.
Okay.
And they're nationalizing those monies and pulling that money out of Russia.
But yeah, it was a logical move. It's like, well, China's 30% of production we don't need in the world, so let's pull back, guys. It's a logical sort of move. It's like we don't need to produce, and Saudi are like, we're going to produce more. It's like.
Yep. We're going to increase by we're going to increase by 1.5 billion barrels per day.
When we've already got this massive glut, It's insane.
Right. So that's that scenario playing out there. Now there are a number of other scenarios playing out about the petrodollar in general. There are other oil-producing countries that are in major peril. Okay, major peril.
Yeah, oil went down the next trading day 30%. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So were there, you said, basically OPEC's broken up.
Yes, OPEC is effectively broken up.
So,
Yes.
you also mentioned to me, like in a text, that like oil, I saw it went down to like 26 or 27, maybe even lower, but it's about mid 30s now. It's come back a bit, but
It went down to
like this,
$26 a barrel, correct?
like maybe a couple of weeks ago now, you mentioned to me that uh, oil was trading at about $48, and you said that there were some contracts that were likely to be triggered at 46 and stuff. So with
26, 36, 46, yes. And those are futures that have been bet on and bid on and paid for 20 years ago. Oil futures go 20 years into the future. And they have bonds that are attached to them. This is what's going to rock the rest of the OPEC nations, because Saudi Arabia has already paid for its infrastructure 10 times over. The rest of them haven't. They're still working on bonds that are 20-year and 30-year bonds to pay for their oil infrastructure.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's the other part of this war.
So that's the destabilization of the investment sort of pattern that you're sort of talking about.
Yep.
Because right when they were like to come into fruition, they just smashed the oil price to decimate partners in the OPEC.
So these are the OPEC countries: Algeria, Angola, Ecuador, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq. There's 15 members of it. United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Nigeria, Arab Emirates, Venezuela. So we know what's going on in Venezuela, okay? Okay? You know what's going on in Iraq, you know what's going on in Iran. So the rest of them are what? Chinese invested African oil producers. And what is Russia trying to do? It's not investing in Africa. It's investing in its own country.
So this is where you're sort of saying that
Qatar left January 1st, left OPEC January 1st to focus on natural gas production. And Equinor announced January 1st, 2020, that it left OPEC also.
Qatar was, I don't know how long ago it is now, but they were ostracized by the whole Gulf. Like maybe, was that 18 months ago now?
Yep.
Because
January 1st,
Qatar Airways, they can't fly through any of the Middle East countries. You know,
that's right.
The unity broke down so much because they had Al Jazeera that was talking truth about Saudis and
January 1st, 2019 is when Qatar left and all that stuff began to go on.
Yeah, it felt like a while ago. So
so a year and a couple months.
Yeah. So this has been brewing for a while then, potentially. The OPEC thing.
Yeah, and then one other thing to note, we've talked about the investment war. Now, OPEC dollar, the petrodollar in general. Now, currency itself is being major liquidity issues in the market, and the Fed is doing is inserting liquidity. What is that going to do to people that are buying in petrodollar with so much surplus and an increasing production, Mr. Currency Trader?
I don't know, dude. It's just crazy.
It's going to stabilize the dollar through all of this craziness and bond yields issues going crazy, because people naturally go to bonds when economic times are hard. Bonds and gold.
And the US dollar. Safe
will
haven.
be safe haven, because the oil prices will basically drop to here like $2 a gallon. Okay. So that's essentially what's going to happen, which people are going to save money on oil during this economic weirdness.
Yeah.
Okay. Separate of coronavirus, because, a lot of people are going to be traveling when they're under quarantine. but gas will still be $2 a barrel. and that's what will stick in their minds. And then the big boys will have a lot more room at reducing their leverage. Okay, getting risk off of their balance sheets.
Because it would be a lot cheaper to pay it out.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a few other things to note about the petrodollar in general. Once the credit markets actually go through a frosting phase, they'll naturally have an artificial defrost from liquidity being put into them. But there's going to come a point where enough companies have shuttered their doors that they're only going to be looking for investment that's going to take them 20 years into the future, because they won't survive without 20 years of investment, meaning something's going to come in and invest in 20 years of payroll. So they don't have to look external for payroll credit anymore. Okay? Like the big companies like Boeing. Okay? The amount of cash they put out in payroll every month is more cash than they can produce every month. But the company is still worth billions upon billions upon billions. And all the big companies operate that. Okay?
Yeah. The thing, like, a lot of people in this conspiracy thing, like, talk about the dollar being fraud and all that sort of stuff, but when it comes down to it, the world doesn't give a shit.
Right. It doesn't.
And that the fundamentals of the economy are that the US dollar is a safe haven and it's reserve currency and it's related to the oil. And to me, I've just been contemplating this the last few days, and people think, peak prosperity, a YouTube channel I've been watching with the coronavirus, and it's awesome. And they did an interview the other day, and they were talking about how the economy's popped and this is finally it. And I'm like, no one's ever called the pop of the bubble, and the bubble always keeps going, and I don't think it's going to pop,
The bubble's going to split into 2, 3, or 4, or 5 before it pops, because it's not one bubble. It's hundreds of bubbles. It's like when you look at soap, and you put up some soap in there, and you turn the water to hot, and all of a sudden it's 1,000 soap bubbles or 10 million soap bubbles. That's what's going to happen. And then naturally some of those smaller bubbles are going to pop, because like if you just leave the soap in there, well, eventually the bubbles disappear. They pop on their own. That's what's going to happen. You're going to see hundreds and hundreds of different market sector bubbles reduce or duplicate like amoebas.
Yeah.
To get off their risk.
Because this is where, like the purist, I will say, of the economy, they just don't get it,
That's right.
Because it's a magic system, They're thinking 3D, 5 cents, and logic. And I mean, back when I was trading, I was like, Bitcoin, it's going to do well, because the logic behind it, there will only ever be 21 million of them, all right? Against a quantitative ease sort of fractional reserve currency, like that has no finite number, Bitcoin was always going to go up, So, but that's where people have their vested interests, and it's like, I'm in precious metals, and precious metals is going to go up, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you just don't get the system, how it works, Not many people do.
Right. The thing with about precious metals, the old adage, gold is always safe, has never been true. Because we are in a technological society that is advancing every 18 months. Example, when gold was at $800 in the late 80s, and then it jumped up to $1,600 right before the Desert Storm, there was a reason. Because they knew the world was about to be technologicalized, and that the chip makers, if they got a standard gold price, they would be able to manipulate the price of gold on a global scale and keep the price of technology low. Like there would have never been an initial cell phone, Nokia cell phone, or any of that other stuff if gold hadn't been artificially stabilized in the 80s. Because back then there was about what was it, 3.5 grams of gold per cell phone. Okay,
Really?
Right. Okay. Now, like your standard iPhone. Here, let me Google it. How much gold is in a iPhone 10? 0.34 grams of gold is in each cell phone. 0.001 troy, equivalent 0.001 troyons. There's also 16 grams of copper, 0.35 grams of silver, and these are the prices from 2011. Okay.
Oh, the volumes.
Right, the volumes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is coming up on Google from a document from 2011's.
No, I never really thought about gold in these Nokia phones.
And there's also platinum. Okay. Everything. And so the net worth is about $4.54 in real gold and everything else combined together. Again, that's 2011 prices. Okay. So you then change that, because what was gold in 2011? What was the price of gold in 2011? Probably 1,300 an ounce, and it's right around 1,600 an ounce.
Yeah.
So if you're producing 20 million units, what is the price of the phone? What is
the volume of gold?
Right, the volume of gold.
Shitloads.
Then that's just phones. That doesn't include tablets. That doesn't include computers and laptops, routers, and all those other pieces of technology that use just as much gold, silver, copper, and platinum, and palladium. So how many millions of computer as cable routers and Wi-Fi boxes are all over the world? Okay, same amount of gold in them, gold, silver, and copper. Times it by hundreds of millions of units. Okay. That's why gold is not a safe investment in my mind, because it will kill the technology industry. The technology industry will never survive with gold at $2,500 an ounce.
Yeah.
It'll never recover.
Yeah.
Will you pay $3,000 for an iPhone? No. Okay? No. You won't.
Yeah.
Will you pay $5,000?
This is stuff that purists won't comprehend.
Won't comprehend, exactly. Will you pay $4,000 for an iPad? No.
Because they're altruistic in a way. Right. And this is a criminal world.
Right.
It's a skullduggery, sham of a system,
So how do you tell people that think gold is the investment to go when it isn't? Because you've invested in gold and gold goes high, you ruin the electronics market completely, and prevent any form of electronics recovery.
They don't really give a shit about that, dude. Right. They're just worried about their investment worth lots more. When it comes down to it.
Okay, what happens?
They just want to be right. They just want to be proven right, and they want to talk about it.
What happens to Apple and Microsoft stocks if gold goes to $4,000 an ounce? They're done. They're done. The chip makers. Okay? Exactly. They're done. They are completely done. Okay? How are you going to do copper wiring the world? Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. What's fiber optics made out of?
Silicon.
And connected to gold, silver, and palladium circuitry.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Totally going to end the entire journey of putting fiber everywhere. Okay. Could the whole fiber market have avoided gold, silver, and copper? Yes. They absolutely could have. There was plenty of existing induction-based technologies they could have used over the last 20 years where they could have gotten the technology off of the need to use high volumes of gold and silver. But there would have been other markets, like nickel, believe it or not, is still can have a signal go through it. Okay?
Yeah, so I like the interesting thing with the economy and stuff, it's like the moment you get to the extreme moment, people think it's going to go worse, but there's always it's an undulation. It's not a one-way street.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's usually that most extreme moment. It's like the buy opportunity or the sell, and it's the opposite of what you think.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it is a really interesting situation at the moment, and the volatility is very high,
and what makes up the volatility index, the VIX, which most people don't get what the VIX really is.
It's a barometer for volatility. That's what it's meant to be anyway. It used to be very I was going to use the word organic, but it's a natural barometer. It used to be very good indicator of things, but you and I have talked how much it's manipulated, but it's almost hit record high at the moment,
Right. If you want to have a weird thing, Google what is the VIX. And you're going to get a totally different answer than you and I have been working off of for many years. You're going to be like, the fuck, are they revising this shit?
Created by the Chicago Board Options Exchange, CBOE, the Volatility Index, or VIX, is a real-time market index that represents the market's expectation of 30-day forward-looking volatility, derived from the price inputs of the S&P 500 index options.
Pow!
So it's a measure of the future trading, That's what
but
they say.
Based only off of Chicago's perception of the market. That's why Chicago holds all those big, what is it? When all the people
CME
come and riot
and stuff like
that.
that. Yeah. The
World Trade Organization, every time they go to meet in Chicago, there's huge riots. Chicago is its own mafia.
Yeah.
Separate of the United States. Seriously.
Absolutely.
Because it's where the secret banking groups are able to take money from the public global banking system and put it into another system. It's the single market that has an intersect between secret banking and global banking.
So it's interesting, Chicago is where Boeing is headed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would be really interested at seeing some of the secret banking numbers.
We're talking about the VIX, and to me it was like an indicator of volatility. That's basically what it says, but you're saying it's Chicago's perception of the S&P future forward contracts for the next 30 days.
Period. Nothing more than that.
Yeah.
It's not even a collection of all the different indices' volatility ratings.
It used to seem like it was that.
They've changed it. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be like all the dollar index. The dollar index is all the dollars combined against the US dollar.
Not that anymore.
And yeah. So all those sort of variables were put together to form some algorithm,
Not anymore. Not anymore. My guess is whatever.
Obviously, it was showing too much.
Well, my guess is whatever happened in 2008, they saw some way for people to see something they didn't want to see. They didn't want them to see. That's my guess. But are you surprised that it's totally changed?
No.
No. But the rest of the world...
How can you be surprised by any of the
Exactly.
crap going on now?
Exactly.
It's like, oh, yeah. Well, they could have... Yeah, it's like, well, we can't have that,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. We can't have that. No way.
There's too little, like, corruption in that realm. Let's put our corruption fairy dust in it.
Mm-hmm. It is the indice. So I saw an interesting statement the other day of somebody was trying to make a connection between the VIX and what the indices are. And technically, the indices are, I can't remember how it was exactly stated, but it made complete sense at why volatility is what drives the CDO market and all of the derivatives, the betting derivatives that the AIs create. Okay? Which keeps the instability going. So I have my own view on what's going on in the secret banking market because all the big corporations have their own bank. Okay? They all have their own bank. And it's a non-SWIFT bank.
In the secret banking side.
Yes, in the secret banking, in the military-industrial complex banking side.
Yeah.
Right. And that's worldwide. And that's worldwide.
And that's not country orientated.
Right.
It's like the full global.
Yes.
Behind the scenes stuff.
Mm-hmm. Which creates the situation that we're into now.
Yeah, it was very interesting that, you know, Saudi were looking to do the opposite thing of sanity, you know, produce more in a glut, you know, and just like destroy the price of oil of their own main, you know, export.
But they can survive. So Saudi can survive.
Yeah, it's a game of like, how low can you survive? You know, like we'll crush the market and let's see who.
And then buy out the rest of OPEC. That means they basically will take over all the other African nations that have no funding on their own.
So they're getting China out, basically. Is that what you're saying?
In a sense, yeah. Because
China's been smashed.
Yeah. In a sense.
They're scrambling and that.
Russia doesn't have the investment dollars to modernize Africa.
Algeria.
Who has the investment capital to modernize those countries? Okay, not the United States.
So does MBS aware of this?
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's like it's a expansion opportunity. So he's gonna decimate their funding and make them
subservient because they're going to come out and buy them when their stocks hit lows.
Yeah. So this plan by MBS and
100%.
How long has it been in strategy for then?
Let's take coronavirus out of the mix. There already would have been a recession plan for this year. So it probably would have been in October, last quarter of the year, where we probably would have seen 2,000 points go off, shaved out. The market probably would have hit 32,000 this year without coronavirus. Easy. Okay? Or 33,000, maybe even 35,000. But once it reached the 33 to 35,000 mark, they had to shave 2,000 points off of it, pulled the funding, and created an artificial shortage. Okay? And then OPEC would have said produce, and then majority of those companies that are overinflated, their stocks would have taken it in the ass, that lost huge market caps, and they would have come in and bought up the stock on the drop. Okay? Not hard to see.
Yeah.
Okay? right when the
this sort of all ties in with the Aramco IPO,
which is tanking,
to get a lot of funding.
right? Which is tanking now. The Aramco IPO, right?
Of course.
Right.
But he got all the country's money in.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that's right. All the countries are in there. So what else can we see out of the market? Who knows? You got to look at this as, back in World War II when everyone was on, electronics were very limited, and the Russians were, the Germans had, fucking ICBMs and all that shit. Okay, there's going to be new economic weapons, brand new economic weapons that have never been seen before. Okay, that's my view.
But yeah, I guess on one level they saw the virus as if this is presenting some volatility. How can we maximize ourselves? And
how can we rob? How can we rob the world when the world's going to be in big fear? Okay.
Yeah. Because it was like there was stability, and a lot of these countries were doing quite well.
That's right.
They'd brought themselves out of sort of, like you're saying, the investment sort of stability. It's like creating a foundation for future potentials, and right now they've crushed it. Sent a lot of the countries back into like
Stone Age.
It's like massive karma.
What will happen if
maybe they'll get the virus?
What will happen if Nigeria has to let go of 20% of its oil staff?
It's like
right.
Civil War again.
Civil War again. Okay. Which will then produce the need for oil.
Yeah.
Their instability is their stability. That's why they play all the sides.
Yeah.
And which is what the petrodollar is as asymmetrical global warfare. Instability is stability.
Yeah. Because if everyone's stable and growth is there, then
there's competition.
They're all producing more, and it's like the price is low because there's no control.
And thus, why I was saying earlier in the conversation, all the big oil exploration companies, they know where all the resources are. Like the world could be switched over to natural gas 50 years ago. Okay, easy. And these are not even deep water wells. Okay, not even deep water wells. These are shallow water wells worldwide.
Yeah, I'm just sort of, it's like Andrew and I, we've had chats about like Premier Xi from China, and his attitude is with the virus, he's wanting to be seen as the savior of the world. It's just like total dictator, sort of like narcissistic worst thing, like trying to benefit from the destruction that it's going to cause. And to me, it's a bit like I'm just processing MBS, seeing this virus, and he's like, let's fuck everyone up. Let's
it's not
take
just
control.
It's not just MBS. It's the petrodollar corporations. Okay? Who run all of the world governments. Period. Okay? The petrodollar people are in all the government agencies. Write all the policies.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to factor that part in too. Worldwide.
Yeah, like
right.
Rex Tillerson was in there as a national security guy for a while.
Right.
Yeah, he was head of Exxon,
Secretary of State. They made him Secretary of State.
Yeah. An oil oligarch.
Right. Exactly. Secretary of State. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, something else I'll bring up as a side to the side to the side to the side of the side notes. We've talked about the other banking system. Russia is also trying to create a tertiary secret banking system in which investment can be brought its way without even it'll bypass all the sanctions.
Mm.
Okay? And it's trying to do it in such a way that it's going to use its own internal oil production and sales as its way to launder external money into its system. Okay? Now, Nigeria tried doing this some time ago because Nigeria has other things other than oil there. A lot of other things under the ground that are natural resources and unnatural resources. So let's define what unnatural resources are.
Unnatural resource.
Just take a stab at it.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Metals that aren't supposed to be existing on the elementals of the current scientific list of elements.
Okay.
Okay. So all of Africa for the longest time, if you go back into ancient history before believed society's modern definition, there were, how do you put it? Have you ever heard of natural nuclear reactors?
Yeah, so this is basically Black Panther movie, Marvel movie with their...
Vibranium, yes. There are things that are under the ground all over Africa that are not on the elemental table. Now, there's stuff worldwide, but Africa, they're easily mineable. Easily mineable. And when you take several different forms of semi-natural, natural materials, you can create a brand new table of elements. Okay? Brand new table of elements. And that's what Africa represents right now. Completely surface mineable materials. Yeah. Now, China has this. Okay? And like lithium is one of those unique materials on the elemental scale. Like, what is lithium used for right now?
Batteries for cars and stuff like that, for the non-petrol cars and all that.
It's also used for non-nuclear reactors. They have been using that for decades. Lithium and sodium-based reactors. Lithium sodium reactors. Google that for a second.
It's getting pretty late for me here.
Okay. If it's getting late if you're there, it'll be something for you.
3
Yeah,
o'clock.
it's getting 3 o'clock there for you.
Lithium, what was it?
Lithium sodium reactors. The majority of naval vessels that you think are nuclear powered don't run on actual fuel rods. They're liquid sodium reactors.
Molten salt reactor.
Yep.
Liquid metal cooled reactor. So what did you call them?
Lithium sodium reactors.
There's a lot.
Right. There's a lot there. All of a sudden, it opens up a whole new area for salt is so common in the world. Technology is easily available. They have sodium reactors. They also have computers that run on liquid sodium too. That's the circuitry runs on the core is liquid sodium. Yes. Okay. Those are your early quantum computers that came out in the late 60s.
Yeah, this would be a lot of research.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information. I wasn't aware of this. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's getting late for you. How about I let you go and we'll chat a little later?
Yeah. I'm pretty tired.
Yeah. Take it easy. Have a good one.
I think I've actually worked out some way, a very simple way of explaining things. So you imagine a graph, right, with an axis that goes up and a horizontal one that goes from left to right. You imagine the up and down one is like dimensions, and the horizontal one is like senses. So the 5 sense 3D reality. So you imagine it's like a rectangle. Like, so say that's the narrative that people operate in. To say hauntings, right? You might want to define it, say 5th or 6th dimension, and works in the 7th or 8th sense. So it's outside our realm of what we accept, but this is where we're being affected on, you know? So it's like you can sort of identify things like, you know, etheric implants or stuff through like whatever, and define each one as this is where it's affecting you. So if you're going to a doctor, you know, and you're wanting a pill and you have an antipsychotic, it's going to lock down this, it affects that. Or like mechanicalize it a bit in the visual sense, so it's actually easy. So
I get it.
You know what I mean? Like, it's quite simple when you have a diagram and you say, look, this is that realm of your consciousness where you're being affected in hauntings, you know? So if you need to be aware of this, because we are multi-dimensional beings, you know? We're not 3D 5 sense. So I've just thought of those simple sort of visuals to sort of help explain stuff, when you can say, oh, you're being affected on this level, you know, and then your parasympathetic is triggered here, and this affects your adrenals in the 3D 5 sense world, which knocks you off, you know. There's a mechanical way of sort of explaining what you do. That's all I've sort of just worked out the last few days. It's fascinating, mate. Like, everything is sort of on the edge, you know.
Yes. So let's tip it over. What can we do to tip it over, Andre? Come on. What can we do?
I do love the fact that you put it out there, like the whole propaganda's running out of steam, and so they need new propaganda. So I'll probably actually need to sleep on that and just contemplate it tomorrow. Yeah. Because like, that's actually very true.
Yeah. All the future people listening, we're about to f*** this world up in a good way.
Yeah, because I see the whole global narrative, right? I see it as like, I don't know how you see it, but I see like, say, Post-it notes, right? Like different colors, and some of the bigger ones and some of the small ones, and some are red, some are pink, some are yellow or whatever. Yep. But the whole thing together is the narrative, right? It could be like 100,000 stories. I mean, it'd be interesting to get your perspective on how many stories are what the narrative is comprised of, you know? Like,
you got to understand, anything that's in the global narrative now that does not include rights, duties, and responsibilities to all conscious, aware beings, free energy, and a law system that's actually fair, the global narrative is completely 100% a lie. Down to the very physics and the very essence of the water that you drink, you know nothing about. Yeah? So that's my answer to that. The global narrative is a massive, gigantic, multi-century lie. Okay?
But I see, like, so maybe Post-it notes isn't right. Like little balloons, all right? And in order to maintain a little component of the narrative, air must be pumped into it, like energy, all right?
Yeah,
to maintain its like perception of focus, you know? So there's an energy input that's required for a story in the narrative to maintain itself in the awareness, you know? So where does all this energy come from? Obviously us, but how is it focused to create a story in the narrative, you know, like to maintain the perception of what the narrative is, which is our appreciation of the reality by a certain guided control based on what the system is, you know, or define. I don't have the right words, but you know what I mean? Like it's... I do, and I don't have any additional words to help define what it is you're asking, other than the global narrative itself will undefine and disintegrate anything that doesn't apply to its global narrative as an equation of its own facts. Yeah. So
And if you make it fit within the global narrative, you still have diffused your own purpose to bring something that's outside of the global narrative. That's like using somebody's other debate to prove your debate. You still invalidate your own debate when you're using their debate to validate your own debate, which is a separate point of view.
Yeah. And that's where I say, like, you know, incarnation, accepting that as an accepted aspect of existence, that doesn't fit in the narrative, you know.
Right.
It's like, but it's core to our existence. If we can't accept that we are a soul that is occupying a human body for a little while, and then we have a different experience, which is death, you know, we cross over from that body and go have another experience. If you as an individual can't accept that, like, how can you really navigate this world? Because it's based on, like, consequence over lifetimes, you know? That's the whole purpose of this whole reality, is to resolve that, and we're not allowed to accept that. Because it doesn't fit in the narrative, which we all believe is the limit of our, like, total expression of existence.
Right.
So it's a setup for failure. You know, it's designed to not work, and you say it's a big fat lie made up of many lies, which...
Of many bigger and fatter lies.
Yeah. Like, say for instance, in, like, what I was sort of trying to say with all the post-it notes or balloons, maybe there's 100,000 stories in the narrative that make up what the narrative is. And say the Trump whole collusion thing might be occupied 20% of the whole narrative. It's like a foundational part of the narrative that's there, but then there's all these other things that pop up. Some don't last, some come and go, some maintain themselves, and some get more traction after a while, but it's all like this big ball, you know? And that ball is what we define, the most of the humans define their existence, and it's so much more than that, you know? And why... The thing is that I find interesting is why people don't find what's outside the narrative fascinating. Why isn't there a desire to want to know what goes beyond there? You know, what is outside of it?
There's no way to validate it. And the global narrative is the father, grandfather, mother, and grandmother of validation. And we're always looking to mommy and daddy and grandpa for validation.
Well, I mean, it's even more than that. It's like structures in society are there to, like, say, peer review in science, you know? That's an aspect of the narrative that people acquiesce into. You know, as in, like, this defines what is, but it doesn't. You know what I mean? It's like, it's accepted. It's so accepted as this is the apex of authority on what is, you know? But it isn't.
Correct. But no one knows, and say not no one, very few people can get out of the global narrative's hierarchical structure of validation of your ideas, because you want to take your ideas to all these other people who use the global narrative for what? Validation.
Yeah.
Therefore, peer review science, like, why has archaeology never had the shit kicked out of it for using fake science, where archaeologists are not scientists? Okay? Pyramids, classic example. Okay?
Yeah,
No, they didn't roll them up on rocks. They rolled those stones on wood.
600-ton stones.
Right. You know, why are archaeologists being engineers? You know, why hasn't that ever been crushed? Because the global narrative wants you to believe that that's what it is. And those command infrastructures, like keeping archaeologists satiated with the way the reality works, doesn't allow clear thinking in the rest of science. Therefore, if somebody comes up with an alternate power theory, they're just like the conspiracy theorists. They're done what? You're called a conspiracy theorist, or you're a nutter, you're a this, you'll never have that.
You're an individual against the chorus, you know? Like, how can you go against the whole chorus, which...
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, your voice is very low compared to all us in song, you know?
That's right.
So you're an outsider.
You're a solo act. You're a solo act that'll never get heard. You're not even going to be a one-hit wonder.
Because the whole narrative in the archaeology is all financially based. because you need funding to maintain your existence. So there's a money foundational hook to incentivize being in the narrative. You know, do you want to exist? Do you want to exist? Well,
that's what exists in academia and science.
Everything. Like I find the medical, like doctors sort of thing, interesting because say insurance and like it's not as big over here as it is over in the US, but like indemnity insurance for doctors, like if they do something wrong and it messes someone up, then there's huge potential for being sued. Mm-hmm. So if doctors issue a medicine that's in the narrative and it causes them like consequence, all right, then they're covered, all right, because it's in the narrative. But if a doctor issues something like, you know, like I don't know, echinacea or something for something, and it causes a like brain seizure and stroke, well, that doctor will be hung out to dry because he's using something that's not against the narrative. So there's like the whole system come down on that individual to make sure that people remember, like, I'm the sheepdog and you stay in your pen, you know? Because,
I get it.
We'll take away your funding and your license so you can't practice this thing called medicine. So we'll take away your ability to have an existence, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no questioning. It's like, it's all about maintaining your existence. It's not about what's right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I respect the doctors because they've got so much they've got to know, and I'm not signaling them out, but they're part of the system, you know? Like, yeah, it's fascinating. And this is where I think it comes down to going through a crisis, like, say, what I went through, to really make people, you know, step out of it and really question themselves, because the narrative and the existence and trying to survive, and it's not easy when you don't have a lot of money, that's for sure, you know, especially if you want to have children and have a like a stable existence.